Call 720-835-3099. 720-835-3099.
You're listening to an encore presentation of this program, KCAA, the Inland Talk Express.
Thank you for tuning in for this edition of Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali. I am attorney Zulu Ali with the Justice Watch crew, Rosa Nunez, Michael Bilal Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Andrea Rodeman. This week, like every week, we'll be discussing critical legal and social justice issues that are impacting our community. This week's topic is the Black Wall Street, as well as hate crimes against African Americans. And so for those of you who do not know about Black Wall Street actually it happened actually between May the 31st to June the 1st. Now, I'm not talking about what Black Wall Street, but I guess we're talking about the incident that happened that we call the Black Wall Street Massacre. So from May the 31st to June the 1st, 1921, a white mob attacked residents' home and businesses in a predominantly Black Greenwood neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. An individual, and what caused it was an individual by the name of Dick Rowland, actually allegedly entered an elevator, and someone stated that they had been sexually assaulted. Her last name was Page. Mm-hmm. And after that, residents around the area actually came into the Greenwood area and just from different places and began to attack people in the area, killing individuals. Ultimately, they ended up, I think, arresting and prosecuting, and didn't they lynch this person, Dick Rowland? Is that ultimately what happened?
Yeah.
Yes. And ended up lynching him. And so, that is one of many incidents of, African Americans who have been the victims of this long history of terrorism against people, specifically African Americans. Now, when we look at the numbers, because I'm going to talk about a couple of things, but one of the things I wanted to look at is the numbers of the African Americans that have been the victims of hate crimes. And I was looking at a statistic that was done about it. Well, actually, it was an article in November of 2020. And in this article that was written, it was a BBC News article, and it actually compared the hate crimes in America up until that particular point, and said that basically Black people were targeted in hate crimes more than any other group in the U.S. However, the FBI said the number of hate crimes against African Americans was actually 1,930. So that was in November of 2020. And then when it gave the numbers of other individuals as far as being victims of hate crimes, we show the Latino population was 527. The Jewish population was, and they didn't give the statistics, but I do believe that out of the Asian community, I believe was somewhere around a little bit less than the Jewish community as far as numbers wise is concerned. And I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, let's see what we got here. It says 4.4% were Asian. So let's look at this number. So 48.5% of them were African American. 48.5. 15.7% was anti-white. 14% were anti-Hispanic or Latino, and 4% was Asian. I'm going to read that one more time.
Yeah.
48.5% were
Mhm.
African Americans, 15.7% was anti-white, 14% were anti-Hispanic or Latino, and 4% was Asian, anti-Asian. Now,
Mhm.
as we look at that, I want to talk a little bit about the President Biden most recent bill, where he and I'm just going to read an article, an NPR article. It says, following overwhelming support from both chambers of Congress, President Biden signed legislation Thursday that addresses hate crimes throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, with particular emphasis on the increase in violence against Asian Americans. At an event in the East Room of the White House, Biden thanked lawmakers for coming together to pass the legislation. He said, standing against hatred and racism, which he called the ugly poison that was long haunted and plagued our nation, is what brings Americans together. Now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk and we'll address a little bit of the George Floyd bill that was passed in March of this year. Now, the bill addresses a wide range of policies and issues regarding policing practices and law enforcement accountability. It increases accountability for law enforcement misconduct and restricts the use of certain policing practices, enhancing transparency and data collection, and establishes best practices and training requirements. The bill enhances existing enforcement mechanisms to remedy violations by law enforcement. Among other things, it does the following: lowers the criminal intent standard from willful to knowing reckless to convict a law enforcement officer for misconduct, limits immunity as a defense to liability in a private civil action against law enforcement officers, and grants administrative subpoena power to the Department of Justice in pattern of practice investigations. However, what is the glaring difference between what we saw with regards to the George Floyd bill as opposed or in comparison to the other bill that we had regarding the hate crimes based upon the increased violence against Asian Americans?
What is the difference?
What is the glaring difference?
The difference is it generalizes in the George Floyd case. It's generalized. It does not actually refer to African Americans, whereas in the Asian bill, it specifically targets or designated for Asian Americans.
I think there was also a sense of urgency when it came to addressing Asian American hate crime in the United States, and it took an entire year after having a video that this man had been murdered by a police officer to come up with a bill.
Right. Mm-hmm. So
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Right. I mean, the timeline and the significance of the bill, and to me, there's a couple of things. Is that none of the, when you look at the history of legislation that was at least what we always stated or always presumed were for the benefit of African Americans regarding like civil rights acts and those similar acts that were implemented. What's interesting about those acts were that they never really addressed African Americans directly.
Mm-hmm.
They always addressed issue about discrimination and use race in general terms. And nothing really, for the most part, as far as the legislation that we have, other than what earlier legislation when it came to just basically the freeing of slaves, and I don't know whether that even addressed the issue of black either. But nothing ever really addressed the issue of African Americans directly. It was always an issue of utilizing or describing race in general terms. And so, however, when it came to the issue of the Asian American situation, which although there may have been an increase, they still continue to be the lowest number of individuals who are subjected to anti-race crime.
Mhm.
So when you look at the numbers are not, African Americans are, 5 or more times likely to be a victim of discrimination than, well, more than that. I mean, when I talk about 5 more times, I'm actually talking about other individuals like the Latino um, and the white population. But when it comes to the Asians, it's probably 10 times more likely.
Mhm.
And so, in light of that, and in the way that they ran to make this decision, and the fact that you got so much bipartisan support
Yes.
for passing it, suggests, this increasing issue and increasing problem that we have when it comes to discrimination and our government's concern about discrimination against African Americans. It's it's gotten to a point where I'm of the opinion that as African American, and we're talking about the Biden administration, who said it last week and I said it the week before, who has done very little to directly impact the African American community overall. Everything is just done in general terms, but he never really comes out and says anything specifically for African Americans. However, he was quick to say something specifically when it comes to Asian Americans. So the question is, why would you not, make that direct appeal or make that direct or address African Americans directly instead of just
You have a great idea for a radio show, but have no idea where to start? Or have you been hosting a podcast for a while and want to take it to the next level? If so, you need the Gab Radio Network. To host a show on the Gab Radio Network, all you need is your voice, and we'll handle the rest. From technical engineering to full-service audio production and much more. Every show on the Gab Radio Network can be heard on our station on the TuneIn Radio app. Plus, we put all of our shows on our satellite, which is accessed by over 5,500 stations. And here's the best part. You can host from anywhere you want. There are many means to connect to the Gab Radio Network remotely, and our staff of highly trained engineers and producers will make you sound like you're right here in studio. So, if you want to be on the Gab Radio Network, the same network that hosts the Small Business Advocate, Radio MD, and the Federalist, send an email right now to sales@gabradionetwork.com. That's sales@gabradionetwork.com.
Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands. Serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew and our discussion on the issue of the Tulsa massacre. and the issue of terrorism against African Americans. Well, I guess now here we are. I mean, before we went to the break, obviously we had this discussion about, um, the fact that the Biden administration has definitely been very vocal and not very shy about addressing the issue of race when it comes to Asian Americans, and that no, and it's never done for African Americans.
Mhm.
I mean, so the question is, how do we deal with that? I mean, it's clear that we continue to be taken for granted when it comes to our so-called political leaders. Um, and it's clear that that's not accidental. I mean, I'm definitely of the opinion that that's really intentional.
Mhm.
The question is, how do we deal with it, and what do we do in order to deal with this situation? Now, I'm gonna give us two sides of a coin as to how we deal with the situation. On one side of the coin, we can say, um, we need to somehow, and this is easier than said than done, is to unite as a people, be concerned about what's going on in our community, and deal directly with what's happening in our community, and stop worrying about other individuals' plight and troubles, because nobody comes to our rescue when it comes to us.
Mhm.
Right?
Right.
That's one.
Yes.
The other one is addressing it as a divide and conquer tactic. Do we look at it as a way of our government, addressing certain individuals, and, like in many cases, uh, being the uh, instigator of a divide? Is there a reason to believe that the government is intentionally addressing certain issues and not addressing our issues, and creating this divide between African Americans and other individuals, because that's what we're seeing, and to a
Mhm.
certain extent, right?
Mhm.
Now, I'm going to address the latter first, and then I'm going to let you guys chime in on it. When it comes to the issue of the relationship between the African Americans and other people, I tend to kind of defer a little bit to uh, Malcolm.
Mhm.
And during the message to the grassroots, where he talked about the Bandung Conference. And for those of you who do not know what the Bandung Conference is, the Bandung Conference was a conference that was held, I believe, in 1952 in Bandung, Bandung in Indonesia, where African nations and Asian nations met together to try to come to some sort of you know common way to set aside their own differences, and to work together to deal with certain. In fact, they wrote a declaration about addressing issues of human rights, and utilizing the United Nations, uh, promotion of mutual interest and cooperation, uh, just an overall way of Africans and Asians dealing with each other in a way, and nobody was really invited from the European nations. In other words, there was this whole idea among the Asian countries and the African countries that, hey, we're going to leave them out of it. We need to deal with something so that we can move forward as people. And Malcolm, basically, it's specifically an excerpt from it. He says, in Bandung, back, I think 1954 was the what happened at the Bandung conference and the results of the Bandung conference. It actually serves as a model for the same procedure you and I can use to get our problems solved. At Bandung, all the nations came together from Africa and Asia. Some of them Buddhists, some of them Muslims, some of them were Christians, some of them Confucianists, some were atheists. Despite their religious differences, they came together Some were communists, some were socialists, some were Catholics. Despite their economic and political differences, they came together. All of them were black, brown, red, or yellow. So Malcolm was definitely an internationalist. He believed clearly that there should be some sort of collaboration between oppressed people, or historically oppressed people, or people that he considered to be brown, black, brown, red, or yellow, and that was the answer to the problem. That we need to collaborate and build this alliance. He was a very much clearly that was his, you know, that was his agenda. He was very much a supporter of the Bandung Conference, right? So that would, on one hand, suggest that that this is a divide and conquer tactic, and instead of trying to blame Asians for this issue, we should probably try to build some sort of alliance with these individuals, work together, and start thinking more on an international scale, right? That would be my argument for it, and I don't think that anybody would, argue with Malcolm's inability to be a very thoughtful person in his analysis. On the other hand, has it ever helped us? Has we ever on a massive scale seen anyone else come to our so-called rescue or our assistance, with the exception of maybe the George Floyd situation, where you've seen this international outcry, right? So on one hand, do you say, well, that scared people? The whole world is basically seeing what's going on. And if there's some traction with this, and that there's a really serious effort among people around the world to work together and figure out some way that we can be diplomatic with each other to stop oppression, no matter where it is, and to, at least in Malcolm's word, exclude certain people in this process, are we on to something on that aspect of it? You was getting ready to say something.
I mean, I just look at the whole George Floyd, right? It was definitely successful and instrumental in creating and generating policy and rallying individuals behind this policy. But here we are once again with a policy that's not even inclusive of the people this whole event hurts. And that's it. That's what they're settling for. Hey, we gave you guys what you needed. Now take a seat again and just, continue undergoing the 400 years of oppression. Here's another one. Yeah, I think there has to be more than that.
I think that everything with the George Floyd case and the Black Lives Matter movement, I think it was more or less similar or somewhat along the same line of what Malcolm was actually were teaching, in a sense that it brought together people under one banner to stand up for human rights. Malcolm was one individual, although he had large reach and he was able to go to the United Nations and everything else. He was one individual. Whereas with the Black Lives Matter movement, it's multiple people. And I think that it actually made a difference in a sense, but I think that people began to lay down after the election. I believe that they put their hope in this president coming forward and him to be able to make some changes and stuff like that, and thinking that he was going to make some changes. In all reality, he's just a repeat of all of the presidents that came before him. And I think that at some point they need to realize that it doesn't stop from him.
All right, so we'll continue with that. Well, I want to talk about that, but please do not touch that dial. We'll continue with Justice Watch on the other side of the break.
Nationally syndicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a Black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali to tackle the most pressing issues. Host Attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning trial lawyer who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com. Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands. Serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew, where we're talking about the Tulsa massacre and hate crimes against African Americans. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Malcolm again and the whole idea of us collaborating with other individuals and the Black Lives Matter, movement. I don't know the problem with that. That was really if we're going to collaborate with other individuals, there definitely has to be a different type of organized collectivism when it comes to dealing with maybe other, because what Malcolm was looking at, let's just say when he did the Organization from African American Unity,
Mm-hmm.
he was utilizing the Organization of African Unity and as kind of like a model, and at least his principle when it comes to connecting with Africa. Although in the OAAU he does not specifically talk about, Asia. But let's just assume that we do that. In other words, splitting the, because under that guise, you have the 52 African nations and then the diaspora,
Mm-hmm.
as being like this whole collective. Do we figure out a way to create an organization that's dealing as a diaspora, dealing with the continent and dealing with Asian nations like the Bandung Conference? And the problem, of course, with us utilizing the Black Lives Matter model, which really isn't an international model. It's just a model that ultimately brings attention, and it appeals to the government to start doing things for people of color, specifically African Americans. Would we agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that?
Mhm.
It's really an appeal to the government.
Yes.
Do you agree with that, Andrea?
Yes, sir.
Now, my thing is, what would be different from Malcolm's perspective, or more, more Malcolm perspective, would be excluding the government, not appealing to the government. That
Okay.
means figuring out some way that you could unite and have some sort of organized mechanism where these countries are working together, one being the African diaspora, in order for us to unite and get something from an international perspective,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
And not relying on the American government. Like all right, we're finished with you.
Yes.
You're not going to give us what we want. You're not going to give us our human rights. You're not going to give us our economic rights. It's not going to happen.
Exactly. I see what you're
So
saying.
now let's start something on the international scale where we're working on an international basis about trying to get our human rights, or trying to get economic justice, or trying to establish something without necessarily looking and begging a government to give us that. I mean, that's not, because everyone tells us the same thing. I mean, the look from the other side. And so it's just like on this show, my objective is not to appeal to those or change the minds of those individuals that don't even understand or necessarily are on so-called the other side of the fence. My objective is to rally the people who are being oppressed to do something about it themselves.
Yep.
Correct.
And if we do that, that is really the answer. The answer, I mean, the voting is, I'm not saying you don't vote. I'm not saying you don't involved in that process, which I believe, you should be involved in that process. However, I believe that we should once we get to a point, it's just like when you talk about the issue with Tulsa, Oklahoma, and that massacre. The massacre was not just about a person that was accused of doing something. It was about them wanting to destroy the progress of people who were doing it without even paying any, without messing with you or dealing with you. That's really what it's about. It's like, if you're always concerned about how we're wanting the government to do things for us, why is it every time we do something for ourselves, you're always involved in it? You're nosy about it. Anytime, like if we have a black leader that says, look, we want to unite and we want to do something, ourselves, they'll figure out some way to throw something in the mix to kind of like disturb that progress.
Got it. Got it. So it's a distraction.
Right.
It's a distraction away from us building and focusing on ourselves and building the Black Wall Street back up and doing for ourselves. Because like you said, at the end of the day, we have to stop worried about them, whether or not they're going to give us these rights, because the rights is never going to be given to us. We have to get it for ourselves. We have to do for ourselves. And then that way we know that then they'll have to follow the script that in which we created. We have to create that narrative.
Yeah. Right. And it takes sometimes, like in Black Wall Street, they had a nationally recognized educational system that was set aside from the government. They had 2 newspapers running over the 50 years, for over 50 years.
Yeah.
Right.
And that Black unity and Black community and just coming together, intertwining their resources in order to be able to succeed, I think it's something that we need now. And within Black circles, but also within minority communities, and coming together in an international kind of spectrum, in realizing that as minorities, our rights are being oppressed, and we have to do something about it together, because with the government, they're not going to do anything about it.
Exactly.
It says, how do we unite internationally? I think that many of the organizations that we do have, I mean, our organizations are pretty much lobbyist organizations. Most of them are organized in a way that we can lobby the government for certain things.
Mm-hmm.
However, I believe that if you take the OAAU model and build an organization with the prospect of you begin first by trying to be part of the OAU, the Organization of African Unity, right? You know, and it is just basically by organization. It has to be an organization that is focused primarily on building this international relationship with the continent and beyond, and to be recognized as the diaspora, right? And in order to build an organization that's going to be recognized as the what is actually going to be part of the diaspora, is that you need to first of all, I think that we need to petition to become part of the African Union, and becoming part of the African Union as a recognized organization. And so to be part of it, there's two ways that you can join. You either have to be accepted as an organization or accepted as an individual. One may be that you have to have dual citizenship. We know that Ghana is offering dual citizenship. And by being part of this organization and having a say in the African Union, then, you know, we start building from there. Really having where we're building to lobby our own government, we should start building to lobby on an international scale. And if we start building to lobby on the international scale, we have to, I mean, you know, we just have to have interested individuals in starting the organization. I mean, personally, I wouldn't mind starting an organization, or anybody that's wanting to join with me to start an organization that's really interested in building that type of you know, alliances for economic purposes and for human right purposes. You know, because I mean, you know, I mean, we need to do, if they're going to shut us out and we can't do business, you know, locally or in our own nation, then we can do it on the international scale like everybody else. And start focusing on trying to do that on the international scale. I mean, you know, I mean, you know, all you want to do is you want to get what is we keep asking for the same thing, and people don't understand. It's just not going to happen. You know, I mean, that's where we are.
And I think that's where, you know, like you was talking about the Black Lives Movement, I think that's where they fall short at when it comes to building an international, you know, structure or international base and stuff like that, and bringing in other nations and stuff like that, and creating your own. It's just, I think that it's just kind of like, it's a moment.
I think that the Black Lives Matter, I mean, I think the issue with the Black Lives Matter issue is that basically, again, it's more of a lobby effort. Because who are you appealing to? You're more or less appealing to a government and a people who have not, you know, treated you properly. I don't believe that that's the way to do it. I just don't believe that that's the way to do it. And I think that, you know, the way to do it is to, if I come knocking at your door and you're not going to, and Malcolm has always talked about the issue of being independent. Malcolm was an extremely conservative man. He was not a liberal guy. He was the type of guy that says, you know what, you got to stop asking them for something. Create your own. Right? Focus on creating it, because, you know, it's just not going to happen. And I'm all for that. I believe that 100%. That if you're not going to provide me with and treat me justly and treat my people justly, then I just have to deal with it some other way. You know what I mean? You know, because, you know, it is what it is. I don't need that. We don't need that. We need to start focusing on that and stop our own. They benefit from our own self-hatred and our own hatred with, you know, with each other. But at any rate, please do not touch that dial. We'll be back on the other side of the break for Justice Watch.
Need some get back. Pay back.
There's a new nationally syndicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a Black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali to tackle the most pressing issues. Host attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning trial lawyer who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com. Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep Your Hand on the Plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands, serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew. We're continuing with our discussion on the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre, as well as a discussion on terrorism against African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, before we went to the break, I mean, we had this discussion about, you know, how do we deal with the crisis that we have in Black America on an international scale. And, you know, that's easier said than done. That's obviously been a conversation ever since, you know, Malcolm's time, you know, during the time of Malcolm. That was really where he was. I mean, everyone says that he was killed because he was getting ready to take, you know, the United States against criminal, you know, for criminal charges against the United Nations. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't think that that's necessarily the reason why he was killed on that. It was because he was going international, mm-hmm. but not taking it to the United Nations, because I don't think America really cared whether he went to the United Nations, because the United Nations really has no power to do anything against the United States, if you want to just be blunt about it. However, I think that there was a concern with the fact that if he was going to go on the international scale, then the whole idea is creating some sort of alliance between, you know, the African American community and maybe other people around the world. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, that creates a huge problem when it comes to dealing with, you know, or controlling a people when they start dealing with things on an international scale.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That makes it seem like, I mean, how can you, you know, that completely changes the landscape.
Yes.
You know, as far as dealing with African people. But, you know, I think that there has to be a serious look at that. I think that that's kind of, and the next question would be, if we, that's where we go to this issue of whether we should take a Pan-African approach where we're only dealing with our continent, or whether there should be collaboration beyond the continent with other nations. That's the real question. That's the question that I think that we should answer. I mean, do we focus on saying, okay, do we build a strong African Asian coalition where we're specifically where it comes to the issue of economics,
Yeah.
where we're trying to utilize this to, especially when it comes to dealing with that on the internet, on an international scale, where we're, trying to collectively address issues relative to oppression.
Yeah.
Or do we deal with it from a perspective of just Pan-African? That's the question.
I think personally that we have to come to know ourselves in terms of coming to an understanding or agreement amongst ourselves first. Because I think that there's going to always be that level of friction if we don't understand this plight, within ourselves. I think that if it has to be taken abroad internationally and things of that nature, I think that it won't fly as clear. I think until we come to understand ourselves and understand what our focus is amongst ourselves, then it's going to be difficult. It's going to be some difficulty in taking it abroad, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Is that it? I mean, we don't know ourselves enough? That we need to know ourselves more in order for us to be successful at trying to establish some sort of international. I mean, the thing is that we, as a people, we are it's going to be a very difficult task to get people off the plantation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that basically we have a large number of individuals who are in a plantation and they're just scared of what life may be outside of the plantation.
Mm-hmm.
But then the reality of it is just because everybody doesn't want to go off the plantation, when you run away, do you just decide who's willing to run away with you and you stick to the people who are willing to run away? Or do you have to create this collaborative effort? Can you save everybody?
No.
Or do you just leave people behind?
Right.
I mean, the thing is that, people, I mean, if you create some sort of degree of success, people are going to follow you.
Correct.
So I think that, you in order to create this whole organization that's going to focus on, building some sort, because if you stay, first of all, there has to be some sort of unity, but you're not going to be able to unify all people of color.
Mm-hmm.
We never have. And it's just, there's just some people that, and maybe there has to be, for example, I don't even know, I have some ideas about how to address many of the problems that we have within our own community and trying to make us come together, trying to educate and transform and unify a people. Because I think that's really the biggest issue. Because, we have to come to a realization that the nation as a whole is are moving too slow.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to get to a point where, at least my attitude is that if you're not going to give it to me, then I'm going to take it. I'm not going to wait for you to give me my humanity.
Yeah.
I'm going to take my humanity. Right. And so keeping that in mind, if I say, look, I'm going to take my humanity, and I'm going to do what I need to do in order to get mine for people of color, whether you're talking about African Americans or whether you're talking about people in color in general, then we need to do that. Then you're going to have disagreements about how we do it, to unify the African American community, to determine how we're going to do that. That's another problem.
Yeah.
But we can't keep waiting forever.
No, you absolutely right. When you was just speaking and you were saying that, I was thinking about Harriet Tubman. She wasn't waiting for nobody. She was like, either you're gonna come or you're gonna go. To some people. But I think you spot on. I think you're right in regards to there's gonna be some people that's gonna be left behind. But once you establish something, those people are gonna fall in line and come right along with you. Like you say, you can't bring hopefully, and you can't bring everybody along with you. So. Yeah, I believe that's right. Absolutely
And
right.
as far as getting us to unify with others, who would realistically would you unify with a group who doesn't even have unity amongst themselves? We got to get it together first in house. You got to clean in house first, and then maybe we can get someone to unify with us so we can build a stronger. Be strong. But why would who realistically, until we get it together, we're not going to get anybody to even want to join up with us. We can't even get it right amongst ourselves.
I think it has to begin with somebody organizing. I think there has to be an organization with the purpose of unifying people.
Yeah.
So in other words, that has to be kind of like organizing a organization that has the task of unifying African Americans. Like I said, like what Malcolm was doing, he never really got an opportunity to see it through, but the Organization for African American Unity.
Yeah.
The whole idea is to try to, appeal to people and unify as many people as possible. With the whole idea, the mission of the organization has to be unification, and that alone. You know what I mean? And if you are able to organize and you're able to unify, then you're able to get some sort of policy done.
Yeah.
There's going to always be probably, if you're able to unify 30% of us, that's worth something.
Exactly.
Or even 40%. I mean, that's going to help. The problem, of course, but then under the unification, what do you do with it? If you're unifying for the purposes of supporting some sort of political party or unifying for some sort of political reason, politics could be part of it, but it definitely can't be the major part of it. Because when you do that, then you kind of like, begin to start, then that becomes problematic.
Yeah, and I would actually advise everybody that haven't seen the documentary on Black Wall Street to go on YouTube and look it up. And the documentary that's actually is coming out by Russell Westbrook. Look at that documentary.
Yeah. Wow. We're there at the top of the hour.
Top of the hour.
Okay. All right. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week, same time, same place, same channel. And until that time, stay blessed.
Miss something today, yesterday, last week? Check out our podcasts at www.kcaaradio.com. We leave no listener behind.
Do you love to dine out and travel? Then join me, the #1 food critic Alan Borgen, host of the Let's Dine Out TV show on PBS, every Saturday at 4 p.m. for the new Let's Dine Out radio show on KCAA 1050 AM. Along with my co-host Isabel Bussey, we will be reviewing local restaurants, interviews with culinary professionals, reviewing